great. So we're going to pay you $500,000 as an advance paid for the next album. Guess who is going to be able to recoup that money? It is the record label. I've been doing music since I was 4. I've been a music attorney now for almost 10 years, and I do the big deals with the big labels. And specifically, you might be thinking of Warner and Sony and Universal, right? The big 3, and then all their little imprints underneath that. You guys have questions in regards to major record label deals and really just record label deals in general. And so today, I'm gonna pull the curtain back. I want you to see what the fine print looks like, and I'm gonna specifically show you what one of these deals, which ended up being in the 7 figures. It was a big deal, big boy, big label, all the things. And I'm going to show you what this looks like because you need to understand how these agreements are structured because a lot of you are working towards trying to get signed with a major record label, which is great. And even if you don't, and you kind of go more of the route of just starting your own label, becoming your own music business because you have to build, it's literally the same route. And so we'll talk about that. Anyway, so let's jump into this. Give this video a like if you are excited. Let's go. All right, so for confidentiality purposes, I have blacked out all the confidential information, but this is from a major label and I was the attorney of record on this, so that's why you do see my information. All right, so this is a proposal. Now, this proposal is the outline of the entire deal. The final agreement is between 20 to 40 pages, okay? But the proposal, which is, looks like 4. Yeah, so 4. So this is just the outline of the agreement, and this is going to give you all the stuff that you need to understand label agreements. So this is an exclusive recording agreement proposal. And so, dear Crystal, we, the label, we're writing on behalf of, we're reaching out to you in regards to your artist. We want to sign your artist. And so this is what we are offering. So territory, it's going to be, basically exclusivity for all of the places, all of the universe, the term. And, as I noted, there's going to be some things, a lot of things that I have blacked out, but because I've been doing this for the last 10 years, I'm going to tell you what is normal and where this kind of fell within all of that. So the term product commitment, this means what is the artist committing to? And when you guys see this, you get super excited. You're like, I'm going to do an initial album or an initial single or initial EP. And what the label does is that they want options. Okay, so the word option is what we are looking at very carefully. So here there were 5 separate options requested for additional albums. And the way you got to think about this, because labels try to explain it and they'll go, if we want to continue investing in you and helping to grow your career, we're going to keep extending the contract, which sounds like they're going to be your ongoing bank. It's going to be amazing. But what you're not realizing is that they are locking you in at these agreed upon terms for 5 albums. Okay, if you think about the cycle of an album, usually it's no faster than a year. That's way aggressive. It's more like a year and a half. So we're thinking this is a 7-year, 8-year, 10-year contract. So we keep an eye on that because, we want to have the least amount of options as possible. Honestly, you probably want to try and negotiate for 1 to 2. All right, this is a lot, but this is also common for a major label deal. So then we talk about the advances, the recording fund. So label will pay the fully recoupable all-in recording funds, meaning the advance, the stuff that's paid upfront to put money in your pocket, to get you in the studio, to pay for your music videos, and then all the additional expenses paid thereafter. All of this is considered the recording cost, and all of it is recoupable by the label. So label will be responsible for administering the recording costs. So, they do all the money stuff, which in one breath, it's great because they're handling all of that stuff. And then in the other, not so good, because then that's why we so infamously get into these disputes with record labels, because there's no transparency. We don't know where the $50,000 for that music video, was that really $50,000? I don't know, but they're not going to tell you. Well, until I get involved. All right, so then it goes, so for the commitment, here's all the juicy money that we're going to pay. Now, like I said, this was a 7-figure deal. I can't show you the real numbers, but what I can tell you is that the initial payment was in the 6 figures. All right, so they go, we're paying this amount all in upfront, and so you're going to do these initial things, provide these initial things, and then this is the interesting piece that I want you guys to see. In addition to the foregoing amount, we're also going to pay Crystal Delgado the amount of, this was in the 5 figures, I can't tell you the number, it was in the 5 figures, as a contribution towards legal fees incurred by the artist. So, that's also great because as part of the deal, they're paying for the artist legal fees. It's expensive. We have to negotiate these things. It can take weeks. You know what I'm saying? I get it. But that amount was not paid to the artist unless the artist signed, right? Isn't that kind of, I don't want to say manipulative, but that's very much going to encourage the attorney on behalf of the artist to get the deal done. You would think that this kind of thing of them offering 5 figures and high 5 figures for the attorney once this agreement is signed is quite the incentive to get this done. But I gotta tell you, I sat down with my artist and I said, I don't think you should sign this. I don't think you need the label. I think you can do this yourself. And I believe that. And he didn't sign it. And then solely with respect to the initial commercial release of the committed, initial thing, there's also going to be, this amount that's going to be paid. Okay, so there was an amount that was actually put into the artist's pocket. Now, this is how it was restructured for the options. And the reason that the label does this is to make sure if we're signing Kanye, for example, and we're going to do 5 albums for Kanye, we want to make sure that he is locked in. So this is how they do it. So album 1, they go on the first option that we exercise, we're going to pay this amount of money. Again, 6 figures, which will promptly be paid upon us exercising the option. And then for albums 2 through 5, this is how it's going to work. And so they actually do a calculation. I can't tell you what the percentage is, but generally speaking, let's say it was between, we're going to take from the recording fund of what we paid for the applicable album, we're going to calculate the minimum and the maximum based on the previous album's earnings to figure out how much we're going to pay you. So this is then they give this little list and we go after album 1 for 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's going to be a minimum and a maximum. The way that it works is that for the minimum and maximum, let's say, for argument's sake, the lowest amount that they could go is $200,000 for album number 2. And the maximum amount that they're going to go is, let's say, $500,000. That would have been for album 2. The way you want to structure this and the way that we typically structure this is that you get more money the more that you go along, because arguably the artist should be increasing in fandom, in sales, right? Otherwise, the label wouldn't be exercising its options. So if the label is exercising its options, that means the artist is doing well. So that means the artist needs to be getting more money. So then I would argue on our little example for album 3, then the minimum should be 300,000. The maximum should be 600,000. For album 4, we hit 400,000 minimum, 700,000 maximum. And album 5, we have $500,000 minimum, and then $800,000 maximum. But this is done on a calculation based on the performance of the prior 2 albums, but we still have a range. So this is all sounding good. The one thing that I'm always going to say to you, though, is that we go, great, so we're going to pay you, let's say, you're going to get $500,000 as an advance paid for the next album. That's awesome. Guess who is going to be able to recoup that money? It is the record label. So I just always want to couch that and just be like, they are a bank. That's all we're saying. And so just make sure that that money, for the amount of time that you're going to be tied up, for the amount of albums that you are not going to own, that this label is going to own in perpetuity, like just make sure you understand what you're giving up in exchange for that. If that makes sense, let's go. All right, so then we go to the royalties and you're like, well, how much are we going to get in the royalties? Because this is the upfront money. This is the advance. What about the royalties? So royalties all in. This is calculated based on 100% of all of the earnings. So we do the US top line royalty for the artist is, and what I can tell you and what I can share is that typically we negotiate this, especially for a major label, somewhere between 12 to 18%. I mean, you'd have to be a real rock star kind of independent artist to get more than 18%. And this particular artist was definitely closer to a rock star independent artist, and he had kind of done his own, thing and built something great and all this stuff. So in any case, the percentage is something that we negotiated, and then you have the foreign, percentages based on each territory. So all this has to be negotiated, all right? But in all of it, at the end of the day, remember, we're saying that the royalty is based on net earnings. And the reason we care about that is that when we're like reasonably trying to figure this out, there's a reason why artists and bands get really upset and they're like, I haven't received my royalties. It's because you sign this thing and you're like, cool, I'm taking the 300,000, and then I'm taking my next advance of the 400,000, and maybe the label doesn't recoup. And so the label gets to take 100% of everything until they recoup. Okay, it's a loan. So that's why, you really shouldn't bank on these royalties. And some people, I've had artists who will not take a huge advance because they're like, I don't want to have, I don't want this money owed. I want to start getting my royalties. And so it kind of like pays my rent, and all the things. These are all things that we think about, all right? Recoupable costs, nothing is for free. So everything that is paid for by the label during the term of the representation. We talked about this. It's funny that I brought up Ye, right? Formerly known as Kanye. And when he had leaked all of his major label contracts, which he wasn't supposed to do, was a breach of confidentiality. I covered that in detail, and this was, a couple years ago. But I mean, his deal was just as bad as everything else that you would see. And to me, it was surprising, but the amount of money that he still owed, that was kind of rolling, and then he would take further advances. So he just kind of kept getting into more and more debt with these labels, which was just surprising to me. I'm like, you should have the best lawyers ever. What is happening here? So anyway, just keep that in mind. It's added, it's recoupable. And then this is where, all right, pay attention. This is what's called ancillary rights. Ancillary rights is what used to be called the 360 deal. So back in the day, and really not that long ago, the last decade. 360 deals were basically just the label saying, we're going to sign you, we're going to give you an advance, we're going to take a share of the music, but we're taking a share of all the other things too. Your touring, your merchandise, your sponsorships, your TV appearances, all the things, because logically, if we're going to help to make you a big rock star and you go and get all these other opportunities, we should get a little taste of what's going on. So then at some point, I think people started catching on, and what labels did is they stopped calling them 360 deals, and instead they did this. So additional artist deliverables as it relates to live performances, okay, as it relates to ticketing, as it relates to social media, as it relates to, merchandising rights and publishing. It spells out all the different percentages of what the label is going to get, but it also gives commitments. How many times does the artist have to post on social media for the record label? And what I can share, okay, on these, what is defined here as participating rights, you really want to try to negotiate down this number, obviously, as low as it can go. But if a label is like, hey, we're going to take 50% of your touring, no, run for the hills. What is industry standard? What is common is somewhere in between. I would try to negotiate 10 to 15%. A major label is going to try to get you at 20 to 25%. And then depending on the territory, I mean, I've done, deals with big, regional Mexican music bands, and, the labels will be seeking 35, 40%. And so it really depends on where you're at. In the United States, we want to try to get you around 10 to 15%. That's my sweet spot. It is pretty common. It is industry standard at this point. But when they try to get that 20, 25 plus percent, when they're not doing anything, that's where I push back a little bit, okay? And you should as well. So these are all your ancillary activities: entertainment, touring. All right, and that's the end. And guys, remember, this was not the full contract. This was just the overview of the main, what we call material terms. Okay, and I want to show you, for example, by comparison. So the full-length agreement that came with this, and with any deal like this, ends up being like 20, 30, 40 pages. You cannot go through that kind of thing by yourself. You just can't. Okay, you're going to get taken advantage of hugely. And I've had people even lose their names, their trademarks, because they just signed it away to the label, and in the contract says you've had an opportunity to get an attorney, so it's not our fault if you don't. And that is legally enforceable. So spend the $500, spend the $1,000 to have your contract reviewed, whatever it is. But in the meantime, what you should also do is look at this. Okay, so this is an exclusive recording agreement template. In this is 5 pages. It's very concise. It's right to the point. And so it has things like, how long is the agreement for? Are there options, right? Who owns what, right? The payment, how many royalties is everyone getting? What about the ownership of the compositions? Who's going to have creative control? And then here we go. There's those ancillary entertainment rights. And so with this agreement, the exclusive recording agreement, this is a template that I built for you guys. And this is the one that I have used for the last couple of years for all of my artists and bands and record labels who want to just do it themselves. If you are on the trajectory to sign with a label, then we still need to do the same thing where we build you as your own music business, because labels are looking for people who are already doing this and that they can kind of partner with. And so for example, if you wanted to start your own record label and do this yourself, that's fine. At some point, we can have a buyout with a big label. They just want to see that you have the fans, you have the streams, you have the interest, and then they're going to take you and pour some gas on the fire. And so if you go to the contract section on topmusicattorney.com, this is one of the most popular agreements that you guys get, which is the record label agreement. So if you are interested in starting your own record label and doing this for yourself, like for me, I started Dukes Up Records. My whole thing was about building my own enterprise around myself, my own team, my own marketing, my own everything. And I figured out I could do it myself. And so what we do a lot for clients is that same thing. You build, you get to where you want, and then you decide if you want to sign with another label. Because at the end of the day, you're giving up ownership of the music. And guess the other piece of this. If you don't own the music, when it comes time to sell it, which is a very profitable thing to do, you're not going to be able to participate in that. So I'm not against signing with a record label. Obviously, I do this all the time. I just want to make sure that you are set up for success so you get the best deal. And if you don't need a label, then just do it yourself and become your own label. And if you want some help, feel free to reach out to me. You can apply by going to topmusicattorney.com. I'll talk to you soon.